Let me just fix this. I'm going to call the Planning and Works Committee meeting for November 7th, 2023. Please ensure you are in the right part of eScribe, the Planning and Works Committee, so we can get your calculated recorded vote. I will now call on the Regional Clerk, Will Short, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair James. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James. Or Chair James now.
Present.
Councillor Liggett.
Present.
Councillor McCabe. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Solonen. Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Ivanovic.
Here.
Councillor Williams.
Here.
And Councillor Wolf. Thank you, Chair.
You. I would like to acknowledge that the land in which we are here today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. And we continue to acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples, their history, their culture, and how it is intertwined within the region of Waterloo. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Okay, seeing none. Yes, okay. Delegations. We will now proceed to delegations as listed on the agenda. I would like to remind the delegations of some guidelines for those joining us in person. Please proceed to the podium when your name is called. Please press the button to make sure that the mic is on so we can hear you. Please ensure that you do not interrupt councillors, staff, or other delegations. Any derogatory statements about councillors or staff will result in removal, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, or any hate speech or defamatory comments will not be tolerated. And one last reminder, if there are no councillor or questions from councillors, please know that this is sometimes our time to listen, reflect, and process what's been said. So with that, I would like to call on Mary Jane Patterson, Executive Director, and Patrick Gilbride, Associate Director, Manager of Green Infrastructure Programs.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair James and councillors, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and really appreciate you finding time for us in the midst of really serious discussions today. We're pleased to share with you our most recent impact report. And first, I'm very happy to share that our board of directors has chosen my colleague Patrick Gilbride to be the next executive director of REAP Green Solutions. So it's lovely that you are the first presentation that we are making together after that announcement. And I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to get us started.
Thanks. You can advance the slide for me. Thank you. So as you can see from the slide, hopefully hear me okay through the mask. So as you can see from the slide that Mary Jane has really left REAP in a strong position for the coming years. We've set a goal of 10,000 actions to achieve by 2030 of people, residents to achieve meaningful actions towards a resilient low carbon future. And we're over 3,000 since 2020. So we're well on track. Next slide, please. And these meaningful actions really contribute to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which will help to set our entire community on a pathway to a more sustainable future. Next slide. Climate Action WR is a key pillar of the collaborative approach that is really necessary to achieve the SDGs. We co-lead climate action with Sustainable Waterloo Region in partnership with the Region of Waterloo and all of our area municipalities. This year, we released the 2020 inventory report. We also went out and engaged the community throughout the region at events. And then we also supported some of our, you can see on the slide, some of the cool activities that our volunteer sector committees put forward. Next slide, please. So home energy evaluations were really at a high point last year, thanks to the federal Greener Homes program. People in the region invested in over $4 million in energy efficient retrofits, and that will result in 410 tons of carbon emissions saved year over year. Next slide, please. So last year, we told you about some work that we did on understanding energy poverty in our community so that people can stay in their homes, and equity in energy home loan programs. This past year, we shared the learning with communities across Canada because there's not a lot of research being done on a national level. So what you see here is our energy programs manager, Lisa Trong, presenting to the Clean Air Partnership. So now I'll turn it over to Mary Jane to talk about some of our climate adaptation work.
We really value the municipal partnerships that help our community adapt to climate change. And you can see the results here of some of those partnerships. We supported 330 homes in becoming more resilient to extreme heat and flooding. And what they did was plant trees, they installed rain gardens, and reduced the stormwater runoff from their properties. This also helped to maintain water quality in our streams and the Grand River. Next slide, please. As our work on the region's wet home water reviews came to an end last year, we looked back on over 5 years of partnership. It's not only the homes that we visited, that was almost 2,000. It's the water-saving measures that we installed on the spot in their homes, 1,500 of them, that helped residents begin saving water and money right away. It was an honor to be part of that program, and we continue to work with the region on water conservation workshops and on reducing salt to safeguard our drinking water. Next slide, please. We are always looking for ways to open up the sustainability journey for everyone, whether they own a home or rent, whether they can come in person or not. One of the ways that we are now doing this, thanks to COVID, is by having webinars online as well as workshops in person, so that we just noticed more people can come to those. So it's a real mixture for us now. The Zero Waste Challenge is another way. It's now completed. We had a whole lot of new participants take part. We were really glad to see that. And I want to report that I spent much of my 30-day challenge in southwestern Ontario where there is no green bin program, and it is really hard to go backwards on that. So it made me really appreciative of the green bin program here in Waterloo region. I want to say thank you to the region for that. Next slide, please. When we think about what's coming up next, I'm going to bring us back to the Climate Action Plan for Waterloo Region. 18% of our emissions come from homes, and that's a really big opportunity. You've heard us in previous years tell you that we brought all these partners around the table to design a home energy loan program so that loans could support homeowners in that big capital upfront cost of making their homes more energy efficient. Since then, region staff have been working to secure approval of that program design and prepare an application for funding from the FCM. And we understand that that design will come before council before the end of this year. So heads up for you, and a big thanks to region staff for moving this forward. It will be an important tool in supporting residents in saving energy and greenhouse gas emissions and achieving our Transform WR goals. Last slide, please. So we want to end by telling you that we couldn't do it without you, councillors and staff. A very big thank you for the core funding that the region provides for REAP Green Solutions. It is the constant that helps our organizations sustain shocks like a pandemic, like the loss of a contract or funding. So this is all possible thanks to that. And we want to say special thanks to the region staff we get to work with every year, Megan Eastwood, Mike Leishman, Dan Mahar, and Eric Thus in particular. We really value their commitment and partnership. And as I prepare to hand over the reins to Patrick at the end of this year, I want to say a huge thank you, staff and councillors, for your support over all the years. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Jane, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and the work that you all do, and especially the extra little time when I had some questions and you were happy to clarify and talk me through all of the work that you do. I would like to call on Chair Redmond to give a small token and recognition for all of the work that you have done.
So if I can just a quick couple words, Mary Jane, I know that this is you coming back to the community in a different role. This is a wonderful, warm handoff to Patrick. Patrick, it's great to see that you will be there to carry on these very wonderful traditions. I used to worry that REAP was one of the best kept secrets in the region. It's not a secret anymore, and it's great to see the uptake. I have a couple of little tokens of thank you to Mary Jane for an amazing number of years of leadership and collaboration and getting other people excited in what is a very important initiative of energy conservation and renewal in the region. So I have something I'd like to give you. I think it's a photo op coming.
Okay, there are a few people in the queue, some counselors in the queue, Mary Jane. So, Counselor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. You're not done yet, Mary Jane. You're not retired yet, so come back. And congratulations, Patrick, on your promotion. And we look forward to working with you in the coming days, weeks, and months. But to Mary Jane, echoing Chair Redmond's sentiments, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been 20 plus years, and I remember when I met you and I was in a different office and you were introducing us to the work you do. And you have, in your just quiet yet forceful and steady on manner and leadership that you've provided, have just continued to chip away and advance and educate and work with councils and MPPs and MPs and community individuals, on an ongoing, steady, just one step at a time manner that has made such a difference over your career here. It has educated certainly municipal governments into the, we have some of our sustainability staff now, and I think to large credit that's to you and your education that you did in showing us why we need those kind of positions in organizations like municipalities, but also in our personal lives as well. So thank you so much for the incredible work that you've done, and I've learned so much from you and from those that you have led at REAP. And so my question to the delegate is and maybe your last time as the last time presenting to us in your current capacity, could you maybe share something that you see that you're worried about, or something that you really see on the horizon as a challenge, but then also something that that maybe gives you some hope or some advice for us as we go forward without you?
Well, I'll just pick one. I see programs coming from our higher levels of government that support people who have the ability to pay for changes to their homes, and a whole lot of homes that are left unaddressed, including apartments rental. and owned homes. And would love to see a federal program for low-income energy efficiency for homes, which is something to advocate for, and which Efficiency Canada is leading the charge on, and we can join our voices to them. And I think that our work in energy poverty has given us, our research into it has given us some indication of what's happening in Waterloo region to a certain extent, a little bit of an eye in, and a big challenge to think about how to tackle that. And it does feel part of affordable housing to me, that we want to help people have homes that they can afford the energy bills for. So advocacy is a big one that comes forward, and I sure heard it in the meeting before this.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Well done, my friend. I will not go for a long walk with you on a hot day again, but well done. And words of wise, you just spoke to regional councils, which involves mayors and council and planning. And what we have to aim for is making sure that these programs are available for all. You're still advocating. Well done. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and I too want to welcome you, Patrick, into your new role, and look forward to working with you. And Mary Jane, just want on behalf of all of us from Kitchener say thank you for many years of being a great partner, a great collaborator, a great leader, and someone that not only, I think, aspired to great things for this community, but really encouraged us and pushed us to think big, to do great things locally, and also encouraged other orders of government to, whether it was at Queen's Park or our friends in Ottawa, or even working and partnering with national organizations like the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to think big. And I know your hand has touched lots of things, including initiatives like the Green Municipal Fund at different points in time and others. So thank you for everything.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jane, and nice to meet you, Patrick. Look forward to communicating with you soon. Okay, we have another delegation. Susan Weber, I believe you're in person. Please. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Can you bring a mic to her, please?
I just want you all to know that I'm also wonderful. You're not going to think about it when I read this, but I worked very hard.
Good afternoon, Susan. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Did I do that? Yeah? I'm good? Okay, well, I'm Susan Weber, and I live in St. Jacobs in Woolwich Township, and Mayor Sandy Shantz is my voice at this table. I don't blame her now for feeling a bit nervous, but I know that as always she will listen with the consistent, mindful, and caring approach that she is known for. The event that set me in motion to come here today was a news blurb about how Mr. Harris and 2 other people had contacted the province to let them know that we were interested in amalgamation. And I immediately thought, no, we are not interested in amalgamation. So who is we? Huge red flags for me. For decades, Woolwich has fought to protect the township line. It not only has been the guardrail that has protected our agricultural lands from urbanization and the hungry eye of the region, but also has allowed us, and by us, I mean the people who live in the small towns and rural areas of Woolwich, to develop our township in ways compatible and appropriate for future developments and our residential growth and business expansions. The Ford government has now given a backdoor and a green light to anyone interested in overthrowing the will of the townships and taking something that has been denied them for years. You might think that it would be enough that Doug Ford has been cut up to his armpits in the proverbial developer's cookie jar, but no. His direction still wants to force inappropriately placed high-density developments in small towns and into the control of people who do not have the same understanding or investment in our township and give them the extra hammer of amalgamation. It's about an outside administrative superpower eyeballing a neighboring territory for years and finally having a way and means to impose and overtake. Small towns each have their own special character. They have a history and a fabric that is visible when you drive through. That fabric is community. They look and feel differently than big cities. It's not only the green field spaces that physically separate them, but the type of growth that traditionally has been supported by the township councillors who have been voted in by the people who have chosen to live there and represent their best interests. I live in a semi. When my adjoining semi came up for sale, my new neighbor told me that she had sat in her car for a couple of weeks at different hours of the day to see what went on and get a vibe for our area of town and our street. She chose to buy here because it was an environment that she wanted to belong to. A new development is nearing completion at the south end of St. Jacobs. It's in an old cornfield in a gully, and when you stand at the entrance, you can look down and see it. You know what I see? I see a high-density mini-city in a small town. Thank you, Doug. I see a developer who crammed in as many houses as he could to make as much money as he could, blessed by the current policies of forced high-density new development. Policies that punish small communities for not complying with their strong-arm tactics, policies that force small-town development to mirror big-city housing. It is not the responsibilities of these towns to ensure that when an investor buys property on speculation, that their anticipated financial gain is realized. There's another cornfield in St. Jacobs that has been bought by a developer at the other end of town. Another developer who no doubt plans to capitalize on the very same premise. Another inappropriate mini-city waiting to be built. I believe that we should be developing policies that line up with community visions and values and respect existing residential landscapes. I get that developers have to make money, but with current power-hungry, strong-arm leadership tactics this province currently enforces, thoughtful and mindful development is not valued and seems to be a thing of the past. Building to enhance and complement existing neighborhoods has been wrested from local township planning and vision. My voice, my vote, high-density developments do not belong in small towns. I oppose amalgamation, and so for those promoting it from here to the province, they speak for themselves and not for me. In this instant, there is no we. Township and city communities are different, and those differences should be embraced, protected, and celebrated, and not have people actively working towards sabotaging them behind closed doors. Power and control is gained with amalgamation taken from smaller communities and manipulated by larger forces. Considering studies indicate that amalgamations
Susan, you
do
have
not...
about a minute left. Sorry to
I'm out of
interrupt.
time?
You have about a minute
Okay,
left.
take back all the things I said first if I could just finish my last.
Sure.
Okay. I'll go blah, 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 then I go... Okay. And you know what, here, typical, but because it was Mr. Harris who got me going on this, I wanted to say to Mr. Harris, I'm curious if you're still engaged in conversations or planning where the goal is to promote the province, the amalgamation of the townships with the region. And if you are, or if someone else is, then as a group, they need to move forward with transparency so the voters in not only Woolwich Township, Wellesley, Wilmot, and North Dumfries are aware of what is happening unbeknownst in their own backyards. Blah, blah, blah.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks. I really did just want to be heard. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, we are now moving on to item 7. We'll proceed with the consent agenda. If you wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now, as we will not take questions on consent agenda items unless they are requested to be removed to the regular agenda. Are there any items that any councillors wish to remove? Seeing none, I'll now need a mover. Councillor Foxton, seconder, Councillor Hunick. Please vote and e-scribe. Make sure you're in the right agenda. Okay, that's carried. Okay, we will now move on to the regular agenda, starting with items 8.1, the Bill 23 implementation update. I'll call on Commissioner Rod Regier to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair James. So this report is to provide education and a bit of an update to Council on Bill 23 and what the changes made through Bill 23 mean for the region of Waterloo and some of the progress that we've been making with area municipalities and preparing for the transition. Specifically, Bill 23 identified the region as an upper tier municipality without planning responsibilities, which will substantially change the way that the region participates in land use planning. While these changes have not yet been proclaimed, we are actively supporting the area municipalities in planning for the changes in roles and responsibilities that will occur upon proclamation of Bill 23. Until proclamation and a date of commencement, the region of Waterloo has a legal obligation to fulfill its responsibilities under the Planning Act, and those responsibilities will need to be continue to be executed until a transfer of those responsibilities is completed. Post Bill 23 implementation, the region will coordinate its input into the area municipal planning processes as required. A slide deck has been attached to the agenda package for your information. Staff will report back with additional details when more is known about the timing of proclamation and the transition of roles and responsibilities to area municipalities. So that's all I have by way of introductory comments. Happy to answer any questions. And I see Danielle DeFields is here in the audience as well, and she's been working directly with her municipal counterparts in the transition planning work.
Okay, folks, this is an information report. Councillor Hunick, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding that this bill will prevent the readoption of ROPA 6. Do I understand that correctly as we know it now?
That's a great curveball question. Well, the bill has not yet been proclaimed. So following its proclamation, the regional official plan will be delegated entirely to the area municipalities. So I think it's a bit of a complex question, and I'd say it would depend.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up, if I may, Chair. I've received multiple emails from multiple individual constituents advocating for the restoration of ROPA 6. So in this current climate, no pun intended, what is the recourse for potentially doing that?
I'd ask Graham Welsh, our solicitor, to respond. Yeah.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Hunick. So, because the portions of Bill 23 that relate to the planning responsibilities under the Planning Act and the Municipal Act for the region, they've not yet been removed. So it's not yet enforced, those portions of Bill 23. So it would not affect ROPA 6. So our responsibilities are still as they were, barring any other direction from the province, which I haven't seen as of yet. So the one caveat I would put out, if there's something you're aware of, I haven't seen anything specifically with respect to ROPA 6.
I'm not aware of anything. Thank you for the clarification. Hallelujah.
Any further questions? We don't have any. I'm going to move on to the strategic priority, the climate aligned growth. And this, I'm going to call on Mike Henderson, Director Transportation, to introduce the presentation. See you later. Yeah, it's good knowing you. Actually.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, councillors. Through you, Chair. Transportation staff are excited to bring forward another important report for your consideration today related to an update on the posted speed limits in school zones. We know that an approach to adjusting speed limits downward makes good sense in order to protect our most vulnerable road users in these areas, obviously our kids. From transportation staff's perspective, sending a clear and consistent message to the community will help to create a consistent driver expectations as we move forward with all aspects of our road safety initiatives together as a community. You will be hearing a lot from us over the next year as we work collaboratively towards significant progress in these initiatives for our transportation network to develop accessible, equitable, efficient, and safe road corridors for all of our residents. Please welcome Mr. Daryl Spencer, our Transportation Traffic Engineering Manager, to share with you the summary of our report before you today. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and through you, Chair. If we could go to the first slide, kind of jump right in and get to the meat of the report. So, oh, pull it up. I'll just kind of crouch a bit. Yeah. Okay, in 2022, we launched a pilot project that involved lowering the speed limits in 31 of our school zones on a time of day basis. So basically 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, September to June. And so with that pilot having been in place for a year, we took this opportunity to summarize what we found and set out some recommendations for changes as we move forward. So if we go to the next slide. So in terms of the existing conditions today, we have a few different strategies in place at our school zones. And specifically, I'm talking about the regional school zones, so school zones that are along regional roads. So we have 4 school zones that are posted at 40 kilometers per hour at all times of the day. We have 27 school zones that are posted at 40 kilometers per hour during the school hours and either 50 or 60 kilometers per hour outside of the school hours. We still have 1 school zone that is at 50 kilometers an hour during the school hours and 70 kilometers at all other times. And then we have 3 school zones left with 60 kilometer per hour posted speed during the school hours and 80 kilometers an hour posted speed at all other times. So that just kind of frames where we're at today as part of this pilot. So we go to the next slide. So what did we observe from the pilot? As I mentioned, we've had them on street for about a year now. We did conduct some speed surveys at 2 different times of the year. Once, I think it was in April, and once in July to kind of understand what's happening. What we found is that the average speed is reduced by around 4 to 7 kilometers per hour during the school hours, so with the lower speed limit, relative to the speed, the observed speeds outside of the school hours. However, the overall speed limit compliance was worse. So we're seeing a 4 to 7 kilometer per hour reduction in travel speeds, but we've seen that the posted speed is reduced by 10 or 20 kilometers an hour. So lower speeds, but worse compliance. Same story with the high end. Same story with the high end speeders. We're seeing a reduction of 4 to 10 kilometers per hour. Again, that's not reflective of the changes in the posted speed limits. One caveat or one interesting piece is when we isolated the automated speed enforcement locations, we did see lower speeds and better compliance at all times, including during school hours and outside of the school hours. So then we can go to the next slide. So we took the opportunity to look at this from more of a policy perspective and how we want our communities to be formed moving forward, bearing in mind the data that we just talked about. So what are some of the benefits of adopting lower speed limits at all times? Well, this could effectively reduce speeds in school zones at all times, particularly with the help of ASE or physical roadway changes. It would help us to eliminate the confusion expressed by members of our communities around having different speed limits. So we do get a lot of feedback from the public around confusion with the posted speed limits having different times of the day. So this would be an opportunity to kind of clarify that confusion. It will help us with some of the operational efficiency of our automated speed enforcement program. And we go to the next slide. A few more opportunities. It would allow schools and schoolyards to serve as community hubs at all times, not just during the school hours. So we've heard from our school boards that there are programmed activities that happened even during the summer months and some of the evenings. We know that some of our schools serve as childcare centers even during the summer months. So there is an opportunity to make sure that these are community hubs at all times. It would give us the opportunity to further expand on the positive feedback that we've heard around reduced speeds from the community members. So specifically those locations that are equipped with automated speed enforcement, we do receive a lot of positive feedback from the community. And aligning with our strategic plan, this would help to encourage people to walk, roll, and cycle to school by making the surrounding areas look and feel safer. So next slide. So what are our final staff recommendations? We're recommending that we adopt static speed limits at all regional school zones, enacting the reduced speed limits 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, and 12 months per year. For the locations that still have 50 and 60 km/h posted speed limits, we're recommending we stay with that at this time. The data shows that it would be difficult to lower the speed limits even further without physical roadway changes or automated speed enforcement, but we're committing to look at those posted speed limits in a little bit more detail when automated speed enforcement is due for those locations. And then we'll go to the next slide. So the implications of our recommendations, it's relatively simple in terms of the in-field implementation. It's just essentially some signage changes. It's not really that significant. And in terms of cost, it's around $20,000 to make those signage changes. And that would basically come out of a council-approved project that we have for various miscellaneous projects like this. So yeah, I think that just about wraps everything up, and open to take any questions.
All right, questions. Councillor Huddick, please.
Through the chair, I noticed in a report included in your appendices that a previous report said that it was better to do the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Speed restrictions because that would create more buy-in or understanding comprehension from the community. You sort of alluded to this already, but how would you address that if we go with the new plan? Yeah, what's the response to community who says it's not logical to have it 24 hours?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I guess my response would be, we see it as schools being potentially community hubs, and there is a value in reducing the speeds even throughout the night for equity reasons. So I understand that point of view, but at the same time, we have seen a lot of confusion with what's happening out there today. So I guess the confusion kind of works both ways, and having the different times of day has resulted in a lot of confusion for members of our public.
Perfect. I agree with you, and I wanted the public to hear that. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Salonen, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the report and work. I did just have one particular question in Wilmot on Snyder's Road, where we have Waterloo Oxford, the high school, and Sir Adam Beck, the public school. So I can appreciate for the rest of the Wilmot schools that are on regional roads, they're currently 50s, going down to 40, they're already in settlement areas. I think that makes sense. However, the two on Snyder's Road, I'm sure you're well aware that used to be a secondary highway. I know when I went to high school there, it was an 80, and it was designed to be comfortable going 100. Going 40, there is almost not a day that goes by as being mayor that I don't hear about people complaining about, even just at the 60 during non-school times. Is there a reason that we've included that one in this? Because I don't necessarily think it's suited for that area, and I know the general public is not going to really be happy with that, and it's not the same as being in a settlement area like the other schools that have been identified.
Yeah, through your chair. So I'm not 100% aware of the history as to why that was included. The only thing I'll say is we're striving for consistency around the region in our school zones, and recognizing that the impacts of speeds have in terms of like the communities and the risks to the students and the people that are using those school areas. So we didn't exclude any schools from the program, but of course we could always take that back and have a look at if there are any schools that need to be looked at closer.
So if I could, when the time is right, just make an amendment asking that we remove the Snyder's Road and keep it at the posted sign as it is now, keep it status quo. If somebody would be willing to second that. Could you? Okay.
I'd second it.
Thank you.
I'll second it. So when we get to the main motion, you can make that an amendment. Okay? Be the simplest way of going about it.
Great, thank you.
All right, Councillor Vimanovic, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. The question, and this is something that we've been talking about at our local council table as well, is this issue of standardized times. And we're, well, I think we may hear from some folks who, don't understand them. I can also tell you that I hear from, and in social media, I read from many people who are frustrated, who support the step around school times and so on, and support it from a safety perspective, but feel that, someone getting a ticket at 11 o'clock at night, someone getting a ticket in the middle of the summer, someone getting a ticket on a Sunday, at 5 in the afternoon is overreach. And quite frankly, it's, I think, taking away from citizens' faith in the system around this. And so I'm wondering how much staff have factored that into their considerations, because all of our efforts around Vision Zero are contingent on community buy-in and getting people to aspire to Vision Zero together with us. And so my concern becomes that in being, overly keen, we may in fact be doing more hurt to ourselves than others, and than not. And I'm wondering how much you looked at the experience of other jurisdictions around this. In many places there are time of day, and month restrictions on it, and factored that into the potential negative impact it might have on our overall objectives.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So, I mean, you raise a lot of good points, and we have heard that feedback from members of the public as well around, expectations and what exactly we're trying to achieve with the automated speed enforcement. I'll answer your question around what other municipalities are doing. So, we've communicated with other our area municipalities within the region, and as far as I know, they have static posted speed limits, and they're looking for our guidance in terms of like what we're going to do to make some decisions at the local level. Around the province, I think in general, as ASE is brought on board, what I'm hearing from a lot of our partners around the province is that they're moving more towards static speed limits, because just around some of the points that I talked about earlier, around some of the confusion that's happening in the field, and it can impact like our automated speed enforcement operations. So, but yeah, your point around public perception and confidence in the program, I mean, that point is well received, but I think I alluded to it in some of my slides and within the report. We see the school zones as being areas that are critical at all the times, even on a Sunday or during the summer, just because we want to encourage people to feel safe to use those facilities. We see them as potential community hubs that they could access at all times.
So one of the, and to be fair, yes, I mean, I was one of the people when we were dealing with this at Kitchener Council who said, let's see where the region goes with this. I can tell you that, I'm not sure where our council will go on this, but in fact, we may go in the opposite direction based on the things I'm hearing from my council colleagues around time of day. And certainly, just recently I was driving to a meeting in Toronto and in fact saw that they actually have time of day and flashing lights as part of their mode of handling this. I'm wondering whether or not part of the solution, maybe if it is in place all the time, and based on feedback from people on social media who have gotten a ticket, it seems, and I'm not expecting staff to confirm this or not, but it would seem that 10 kilometers seems to be the threshold where people are getting tickets. Is it an option for staff to use a different threshold at off hours, for example, at 2 in the morning, as opposed to the same one? Again, trying to find that right balance in terms of how this happens.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Generally speaking, when we talk about thresholds, we are trying to be consistent with all the other municipalities around the province. In fact, we are consistent with all the other municipalities around the province that are using automated speed enforcement. So technically, we could change the thresholds. We are trying to essentially uphold the confidence from the public perspective at a provincial level. And so there are ways to manage the program, but we are, like I said, we're trying to be consistent with how the program is envisioned at a provincial level.
Okay, Councilor Banovic, I think you're on about question 4 now. So just if there's a follow-up, and then we got to move along through the queue.
That's fine. I'll leave it for now and key in if I need to.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nowak.
Yeah, just a quick question and an observation. I think especially on the rural roads where you have the school zones, one of the problems has been is the amount of information that's on one of those small signs. I mean, you almost have to stop to read it to find out the time of day and all that information. So I'm just hoping, and just make the comment that I hope that you do some significant work with signage when it comes to the school zones, especially in the rural areas, something big and bold so that people are maybe not caught off guard. So I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
Yeah, through you, Chair. In terms of the signage, the sizes are actually spelled out for us within the Highway Traffic Act, so there's not a lot we can do in terms of the regulation signage. We could look into opportunities to provide special advisory signs, but yeah, some of the signs that you see out there today are mandated within the Highway Traffic Act. But with the proposal that we've put forward in front of council today, some of that information would essentially go away. That we wouldn't have the time of day, the months, and the day of the week on there anymore.
Thank you. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Just a comment, really. I'm glad to see going to a consistent signage. We dropped our school zones on the township roads, and quite a number of years ago, we did a 24/7, 12 months of the year. And so with the regional signs, that's caused confusion for us. So from our point of view, I'm happy to see it be consistent all the way around. And just a quick anecdote, I was traveling behind a vehicle that was coming upon a school zone, and he or she was actually speeding coming up to it. As soon as they saw the ASE sign, they slowed right down to the speed limit. So just
it works. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I just want to have one point of clarification because I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I've tried to organize them in a clear manner. So when we do put in the cameras, we're putting in cameras basically at every single school zone. If it was remaining at the time of day, so say it's like 30 during the school hours, and then it's 40 on just that whole street for the rest of the day, the cameras are running 24/7, and I'm assuming then that the people would get a fine for being over 30 until 5 p.m. and then after 5 p.m. it would only be if they exceeded 40. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. Could you repeat the question?
So we have the time of day. So once the cameras are all in place, people will get a ticket. So like I live near the Franklin Street, and everybody gets busted on that one. It goes down to 30 during the actually that one's 24/7. So that one everyone gets busted for. But the ones on the regional road near me, up near Weber, those ones are only 7 to 5. So if the cameras are in place, my understanding would then be that as long as you're over 40 during the day until 5 p.m., you would get a fine. And then later in the evening, if the camera was still running all night, it would be if you exceeded 50 at that point. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So just from a point of compliance, like obviously in your slides you showed that as long as there are cameras there, people will follow it. It doesn't really matter if it's the 7 to 5 or the 24 hours. People are much more compliant when it comes to having cameras in place just because they know that there's that expectation. And so I know a lot of people really do not like having 24/7 speed reductions, especially on streets that are kind of major arteries. And as you guys said, consistency is key. So logically, I would assume that if we made it across the board, 7 to 5, Monday to Friday, September to June, and that was the whole entire region, everyone would know that expectation, but they would still know that, there are cameras there, so I should be watching my speeds at any time of the day. So I just feel like that was something that I've been hearing a lot of in the community, and people will adjust. I know it seems confusing at first, but once the signs are up and people get used to it and all the cameras are in place, I don't think we'll have as much of a problem with it. So also leaving the signs would probably save us the $20,000. So that's just my thought on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair. Schools are no longer hubs. A lot of extra programs are not allowed at the schools. So if you really wanted to do 24/7, you would have to do the parks, the arenas, because those are the hubs on the weekends and in the evenings. The kids aren't, the schools have restricted a lot of activities on their grounds and do not allow it. And they have bylaw going around to move people along. So I don't believe that argument really holds here. Another thing is, I don't want you to feel offended if we don't agree with everything on your report. Your job is to provide the report. Our job is to discuss it and say what we think might be better or not. So I think a consistent time frame of 7 to 5 and from September to June. And I'm leaning towards that way. I think it's just, how would, it's late at night and you're coming home from work or something and you're going over the speed limit because you want to get home because it's late at night and there's nobody out and you get a ticket. And I'm sorry. I just think it would be better if we did the time frame 7 to 5.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report. I agree with many of my colleagues, and that is that I think it's important that we have constituent buy-in, and I don't think we're going to get it if we don't look at just the 7 to 5 during school hours. I think, I think if you get a ticket and you were going fast during school hours, you would think it was justified. If you get it at a time when you know it was safe to do the speed limit you were doing, you'd be resentful. I know in Guelph, they've got this going right now. My daughter lives in Guelph, and her next door neighbor got a $180 ticket. And I think that's what we also have to realize is that these tickets aren't cheap, and we don't have control over the ticket price. That's the province. So that was for doing 50 in a 30. The 30 was their school zone, which is 50 before the school zone, 50 after, and it was 10 o'clock at night. So it's that kind of thing. And what the neighbor pointed out was if he'd been stopped by a police officer the officer generally would reduce it by 10 kilometers and look at the circumstances of when they were given the ticket. There was some discretionary part of the decision. Whereas with our cameras, we don't have the discretion to say, okay, this was understandable why you were going this speed. So I think to get the citizen buy-in, I think we should really look at time of day. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McCabe, and then I want Commissioner Getsky to just weigh in a little bit on this.
Okay, well, I was prepared to move the motion if someone wants to second
Perfect.
that
Is
for
there
me.
a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hunix.
And just some brief remarks that I have to say it's really frustrating to sit here and hear some comments that I'm hearing because, so one of the things that I know in Waterloo we hear, and I think it's very common across every municipality that, because you've told me, is that one of the main complaints that people contact their city council, regional council, mayor, chair about is driver speeds. People drive too fast. That is one of the main complaints we get. So we asked staff to do this work and to come back and say, what can we do to address that? Staff have come forward with very reasonable proposals here. And I'm really concerned. I mean, someone mentioned about balance, but I'm really concerned that this is not at all about balance, right? We're talking about vulnerable road users, children, maybe people who are, moving through our community, but particularly children, people taking their kids to daycares, to schools, to elementary schools. And I mean, if you're not going to put those people first, compared to a car or a vehicle, there's no balance there in my mind. Children and vulnerable road users, particularly in school zones, should be first. We need to be consistent, as staff have said. It's the best way to adapt or to change driver behavior or people's behavior. Consistency is key. We're talking about mere seconds, maybe a minute, 2 at the very most, of slowing people down. We're talking about seconds in someone's travel time. Schools are hubs. Schools are used, in my community, schools are used all the time. There's playgrounds throughout the entire year, summer, winter, spring, that are used. They're used on weekends, they're used in evenings, they're used for cricket, they're used for baseball, they're used for soccer, they're used for hanging out, playing they're constantly used. So these are important places in our community to protect, and I think asking people to slow down for a few seconds of their day is not a big request. Sorry, that was longer than I expected.
That's okay, Councillor
But I
McCabe.
hope we vote in favor of this.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. There's 2 councillors in the queue for kind of final thoughts, and then we're going to call the vote for this, okay? The amendment. So we're going to move that after. That will come after. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Chair James. I'm going to support the recommendation. We hear so often, and particularly from our townships, about the speed in the settlement areas and around schools, and maybe the lack of policing. And I think this might be one way of providing some support to the townships. And in the urban areas, I think all of us get calls all the time about the speeding that goes on, and the danger that it presents to children and to seniors trying to cross streets with the speeding. And so I think consistency is important in this, and I can't imagine that this is going to negatively change people's lives because they're going to lose a minute or 2 in their daytime to keep other people safe. So I'm supportive of the recommendation.
Okay, Commissioner Getsky.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of
comments on other side effects of the time of day restrictions. One is with respect to navigation tools. So today, if your Google Maps or your Waze, for example, they will not take into account the variable times of day, so they may actually give you erroneous information on the speed limit. So that's one source of confusion and possible tickets for drivers. A second issue is that with time of day restrictions is that people tend to challenge the tickets more, so there's more administrative cost to that because, for example, we're going to say it's restricted to Monday to Friday, but the driver will say, well, it was a Wednesday, but it was a PA day. So does that not count? So we're going to have more challenges on the tickets. And the third side effect also that we're receiving is that if you have, if the time of day, if there's a higher speed limit allowed for at night, this is the speed that we're going to have to design the road for. So if we want, that means we cannot make physical modifications to the physical road environment to match the slower speeds that we want during school hours. We have to leave it for, if for example, say the speed limit is 40 during school hours and 60 outside of school hours, that means we have to design it for somewhere between 60 and 80. I know we designed it to like 85th percentile or something like that, but we won't be able to do the necessary design changes to physically modify the behaviors. So that means that means in a way, when people have to drive 40, they will be driving on roads that are physically designed for higher speeds. And then so that adds a little bit of that cognitive mismatch for drivers who are driving across these zones. So that's just kind of just the three other side effects that weren't explicitly mentioned there today that I wanted to share with you for your decision making.
Okay, Councilor Ivanovic.
Well, I believe actually that Councilor Wolf has an amendment to actually look at time of day, and so I'll speak to it once that amendment is put on the floor. I mean, Mr. Getsky, actually, just as a follow-up in the meantime, though, on a question, I find, I can buy into the Google rationale, although I'm not overly concerned about that. My bigger concern, quite frankly, is this notion that we're now going to be designing the road differently. A road is designed for the length of the road, typically. Not for are we talking, 150 meters on each side of the school that where the speed changes? Is that correct? Is that 150 meters, 200 meters?
Yeah, through your chair. So yeah, within school zones, it's 150 meters from the essentially the boundary of the property. So it could be roughly 400-meter stretch of roadway.
Right. So Mr. Getsky, and respectfully, I'm struggling to understand how we're now going to take a different design on a 2 or 3 kilometer stretch of road because 300 meters of it is in a school that's going to at times be 10 kilometers slower. Surely you're not telling me that that's the fundamental engineering premise we're taking to this.
Through the chair, I mean, we've heard from council the desire to slow down, to reduce speeds near schools, and for that there are different kind of local improvements such as pedestrian islands, additional restrictions which actually restrict the lane width, and these would be if we want to be able to maintain safety for the drivers at a higher speed, some of these designs would not be acceptable. So that's just what I wanted to share with you.
So that would still continue to be the case as it is now. I'll wait for my comments until once the amendment is put on the floor.
Okay, so we have the original motion that we have to vote on, or we're going to take, okay, Councillor Sullivan, what's your amendment?
So my amendment is now on eScribe, but it's to remove Snyder's Road in Wilmot from Schedule A and keep it as current with timed Monday to Friday, 7 to 5, September to June at 40 kilometers and 60 kilometers all other times, and added in that staff report back on the potential for flashing light system at the site to add clarity to the public when 40 kilometers is in effect. And I believe Councillor Foxton said she was willing to second this.
Okay, so you've moved it. Councillor Foxton seconded it. Is there any debate on this amendment? Councillor Erb?
I have a question. So would this be the only school zone in the whole region where this would be specific? Regional school zone?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Would this be the only regional school zone in the region where this would be a specific, where this amendment would apply to?
It sounds like it.
Pardon?
Yes,
Sounds like it, yeah.
Through the chair, I'll jump in. Yes, I mean, the objective with the rest of the decisions was to have consistency on no time of day, same signage everywhere else. So yes, that would be the only, if this amendment were passed as is and no other amendments come, that would be the only regional school zone with a time of day restriction and specific signage.
And am I correct from a previous slide that there are 4 of those in the region? Or how,
Okay, yeah, so sorry, from, through you, Chair, we have 4 school zones right now that are posted above 40 kilometers per hour, even during the school hours, 1 at 50 and 3 at 60. Is that what you were referring to?
yeah, okay. I think.
Your mic's still on, Jim.
Okay, is there any other? Okay, Councillor Wolf.
I also had an amendment regarding school times to the original motion.
Okay, so we are dealing with Councillor Sullinan's motion first.
Okay.
To vote on that, and then we will add in your amendment. Okay, so.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Getzky.
Sorry, just adding a technical item that's being shared by the team is that it would be very challenging and probably impossible to operate automated speed enforcement with flashing lights. I think the reason is mainly because we have to demonstrate that the signage is in place at the time the ticket was issued. So we'd have to, so that would be a bit of a contradiction. So if we keep the flashing lights, we cannot basically ticket speeding users on that stretch of the road.
That's great. I'm just going to need that in writing for my general population, so if we can just leave it in, but I do appreciate that. And I know that you're also aware this is the site that somebody likes to cut down that ASE system, so just having it, I think, brought back formally in writing would really be great for the community. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Urbanovic.
Yeah, just on that as a follow-up question. I mean, there's other municipalities that have flashing lights in place where there's cameras. So I'm just struggling to understand what the issue is.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So yeah, the ASE cannot operate with the flashing lights because there's no way, the way the system works is it provides a photographic evidence of the infraction. But there's no way to prove that the flashing lights were operating or not operating. And so therefore, any other municipality around the province who is going to ASE in those locations is moving off of the flashing lights because that's not enforceable.
But would the speed limit signage and time of day not be what matters and the flashing lights are only drawing extra attention to it?
I mean, technically, yes. If the signage is there that shows the time of day restrictions, then yes, that would technically work. But the flashing lights themselves don't add anything to the mix.
So I guess as part of Mayor Salmon's information, I'd like to actually see what the legal wording is around that in the Highway and Traffic Act.
Are there any other comments on the amendment? Okay, Councillor Deutschmann.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair James. So I just had a question for this particular area. I know it's in the rural area. Why wouldn't we treat it like the other 4 and just reduce the speed, or does it have to get down to 40? Or couldn't you just say have it 50? Like the one is 50 and a couple others are 60. Why not treat it all the same?
Certainly the reason for my motion is status quo. So right now it is down to 40 during school hours is how it's signed. So I wasn't looking to make changes to that per se, just keep status quo as to what it is I can't speak as to why it in the past wasn't just down to 50 like the other 4 school zones.
Okay, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, well, just the way we're talking about this, maybe my question, I was completely misunderstanding it. So the cameras then, if we had the 7 to 5, would just like, they would turn off at 5? No one would get tickets past that? Or would it be the reduced speeds at that time, but the cameras are running the whole time? That's what I was trying to understand. Like,
Yeah, through your chair. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the cameras would not be enforcing. Essentially, the cameras would be enforcing the bylawed speed limit at whatever time that happened, whatever time the infraction occurred.
okay, and I think that's where the confusion is probably lying. People are wondering, okay, are the cameras just going to turn off at 5? So I think if we did continue with the 7 to 5, which most people actually, like I found my constituents are more in favor of, then we would have to make it very clear, like once it goes back up to 40 from the 30, you still have to abide by that 40. You can't go above that because the camera will still be on past 5 p.m.
Okay,
Chair James.
Councillor Wolf? You're in the queue. Okay.
Chair James.
Yes, Councillor Hunick?
When there's amendments upon amendments upon amendments, I get really lost. So I just want clerks to know that I'm not in favor of the amendments, but I am in favor of the original motion. So I'll vote effectively, but in case.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Councillor. We'll make it very clear what we're voting on as we go through. So, yes. Okay. Okay, so just so we're all on the same page here, we're going to be voting on Councillor Sullivan's amendment, and I will read that. So the amendment is to remove Schneider's Road, Wilmot from Schedule A and keep it current with timed Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., September to June, 40 kilometers and 60 kilometers at all other times. And that staff report back on the potential for a flashing light system at this site to add clarity to the public when 40 kilometers is in effect. Please use your e-scribe to vote. So that is carried. Okay, so Councillor Wolf, your amendment, do you want to put that forward?
Yes. So basically, my amendment would be the original amendment, which would say that the regional municipality of Waterloo approve the permanent lowering of posted speed limits in school zones on regional roads from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday, September to June, by amending the region's traffic and parking law, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know. Okay, can we'll take 5 minutes. Councillor Wolf, can you email it to clerks?
Oh.
All right, everybody, we're going to reconvene. Okay, everybody. Okay, so we have an amendment presented by Councillor Wolf. There is not a seconder yet. I need somebody to, is there a seconder? Councillor Verbanovic? Okay. Does, you can speak to your motion, Councillor Wolf.
I think we've already spoken to it, so. Oh, does she? Oh, should we read it for Chantal?
Okay, so I am happy to.
Okay.
The Regional Municipality of Waterloo amend the proposed attachment A as provided in report TSD-TRP-23-014, update on posted speed limits in school zones to state that this is enforceable from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday, and from September to June. Councillor Verbanovic, I have you in the queue.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Wolf for bringing forward this amendment. I will support it. Listen, dealing with these issues is never easy, and I share the comments and the concerns. Quite frankly, that the safety of our kids in school zones is of paramount importance, rather. Having said that, as we deal with these kinds of initiatives, and there's no question that speeding on our residential streets is the concern that we hear the most about from residents. But at the same time, when we hear about that, as we've been implementing these, the biggest concern that, at least in our city, we've been hearing is around the way these cameras have been implemented, particularly in off hours. And I think if we want to ensure that people have respect for the law, that we get buy-in from the community around these kinds of initiatives and Vision Zero, which I think is critical, people need to feel like we're being reasonable in our approach. And when they don't, people start pushing back, rebelling, and you start having the kind of divisiveness that we're seeing in some aspects of our society. And that's a big concern for me. And so I think it's better to go with a balanced approach and build on that with the community and education and appropriate signage going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair James. I just for my own clarification, in this one big region that we have here, do we have what do we have going on? Is it a patchwork? Can Mathieu or someone tell us what we have going on? I thought this was getting us aligned with other communities. So what is happening here? Shouldn't we all be striving for consistency on this? So maybe some clarity, please.
Sure. Through the chair, I think that was the objective of this report, is to achieve more consistency towards across, at least starting with regional school zones and along regional roads, and then talking with area municipalities about getting to greater alignment so that drivers basically have the same or very, very similar kind of rules everywhere. So yes, the objective was consistency here. Yeah.
But what do other cities have? Other area municipalities have this as well? Right, 5 of 7 have 24/7.
24/7. He's got some. We have them.
So can I get clarity on that? I mean, it's very, it seems like we're creating confusion when we should be striving for consistency.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So as far as I know, most of the cities and townships have static speed limits for the most part. I think there's a few legacy locations with the flashers, but I know that the city of Kitchener, the city of Waterloo, for example, they have consistent time of day speed limits in their school zones.
I'm sorry, does that mean 24/7? I'm not sure what that means.
Yes, or static, I mean 24/7, yeah, the same speed limit at all times. Yeah.
Okay, so where?
Most of the cities, like the vast majority of the school zones throughout the region. I think there's a few legacy locations that have the flashing lights to indicate when the lower speed limit is in place.
So you mean like Cambridge and Waterloo?
Yeah, they have static speed limits.
Okay, but not Kitchener.
Kitchener, I believe, does as well.
Does? Is that?
Okay, no, I'm waiting for direction from the chair. Thank you. So Kitchener does currently, but our council has been reviewing it. Staff have indicated that there was a report coming and that would be considered at the region because we last dealt with it about a month and a half ago. And we were waiting to see where the region went before we decide where we go. I can tell you that the mood around council is towards time of day, but obviously I can't predict how council will ultimately decide, once we know what happens at the region. But some of the concerns that you've heard expressed around the horseshoe today are similar concerns that have been expressed by area council colleagues.
Okay, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. A number of years ago when we went to lower speed limits at all our schools all day through the summer and into the evening, the point was made, and it's a good one, that we have kids playing there. Our soccer fields, for example, are used by the soccer teams in the evenings all through the summer. So it's a meeting place for community in our community. It's a meeting place for kids mostly, and so we gave the consistent speed zones, and I think that's important. I like the consistency with on all the roads on all the schools. So for us, it fits with where we've gone for many years, and it's working.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond, or Chair Redmond.
I just concur with the Councillor Shantz, and I would say that back in February, we were urging staff to move more quickly. I think to Councillor Bogdanovich's comments, this is an opportunity to provide some leadership. So I won't support the amendment, and I will support the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. And just a quick note, when Councillor Deutschman asked about the other areas, I was referring to Guelph and Brant and a lot of areas that have the restricted time zone. And also, we don't have the soccer field to that anymore. It's all our parks and that, and our complexes that have where the kids are going on the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I just, it's been interesting to listen to this debate go back and forth. I know, Will, we got to vote, but I have to weigh in because I think, first of all, Councillor Wolf, I can't support the amendment. And speaking to this is not just councillor, but a mother of somebody who also, we live in a school zone. Sometimes these daycares don't get out until 6 p.m. There is constant speeding. I have heard very few from community that says not to have these safety zones, and and what I'm hearing is actually that they need to be more consistent, and we need to expand the program throughout. Similar to Councillor McCabe, these are school zones that, residents are buying with children who are not just around during school hours. And the speeding that is happening in this community, we are one of the highest percentage of children in Canada. So I think if we're going to do this, it should be consistent across, and it really needs to center those that are vulnerable, not just students as well in school zones, but there are also seniors as well who are walking, who are traveling. So I think it's been a good debate and discussion. Unfortunately, I won't be supporting your amendment, Councillor Wolf, but happy to support the other one. Okay, so you will be prompted on e-scribe. Okay, so the motion was defeated. So we will now go to the main motion as amended by Councillor Selenin. That'll be prompted on your screen. We've got a mover and a seconder for that, right? Okay. Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, so we are now moving on to 8.3, Strategic Priority, Equitable Services and Opportunities. I will call upon Commissioner Rose, Engineering and Environmental Services, to introduce the presentation. It's 8.3.1. Okay, all right, Commissioner Rose, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair James. Today we'd like to bring to Council's attention, committee's attention, the asset management policy update. And we've been talking about asset management a lot through the budget with respect to infrastructure, infrastructure and condition assessment, and making sure that our 10-year capital plan matches the needs of our infrastructure, and that we're investing the right funding at the right time to ensure we extend the life of the asset. So this policy update is just to get Council's approval with respect to some of the items that we've added to it to make it more in alignment with our strategic plan and the other work we're doing across the corporation. And I would like to introduce our new director, Katie Johnson. She's the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Asset Management. This is her third week, so I commend her for coming up and doing a presentation on asset management. And I'll just turn it over to you, Director Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Rose. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. Good afternoon, Chair James and members of the Planning and Works Committee. I'm here to provide an overview of updates to the asset management policy. Today's presentation complements the report shared with the committee and highlights recent changes made to the asset management policy. The updates satisfy regulatory requirements and support the new regional strategic plan. Next slide, please. By way of a quick overview, asset management is the practice of investing in infrastructure to extend the life of the asset. This can include maintenance, for example, replacing the filter in a building's furnace, repairs, for example, repairing a pothole, rehabilitation, for example, road resurfacing, and replacement. The region's corporate asset management policy sets out the guidelines and principles for the regional asset management program. Ontario Regulation 588/17, Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure, sets the legislated requirements for the asset management policy and timelines for its review and, if required, its update. The asset management policy is based on corporate strategies, stakeholder requirements, and asset management maturity practices, all of which evolve over time. Next slide, please. The approval of the region's strategic plan, 2023-2027, was integral to the policy update, as the focus areas of climate-aligned growth and equitable services and opportunities allowed for policy language to be updated to ensure these goals are met as we consider priorities and decisions for infrastructure investment. Data collection and analysis is at the core of the practice of asset management. The drive is to leverage data to inform strategic planning and prioritization, to link infrastructure investment decisions to service outcomes, to do the right work at the right cost for the right reasons. Next slide, please. Updates have been made to the policy's community-focused guiding principle through the addition of promoting diversity, inclusion, and equity for marginalized communities facing exclusion, and through committing to better understand diversity, inclusion, and equity for citizens of Waterloo Region through their interactions with the region's infrastructure assets. Within the policy's citizen and stakeholder engagement guiding principle, the addition of collaborate with Indigenous leaders to ensure our responsibilities under the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action are honored has been made. Next slide, please. Language has also been updated in the policy to clarify the region's commitment to climate change. This section in the policy now reads, "The region commits to embedding climate change considerations in asset management planning and to the development of tailored actions that make the best use of its resources to mitigate and adapt to climate change, including considerations related to infrastructure as outlined in Transform Waterloo Region." Next slide, please. Finally, a few administrative changes have also been made to the policy. These include added and updated definitions to Asset Management International Standard ISO 55000, emphasis on the need to understand full life cycle costs of assets and the trade-offs that we have to make between levels of service, risk, and cost of service, and an increased structure to the asset management governance framework. In conclusion, the asset management policy is essential to providing direction and a vision to the asset management program. The asset management policy, coupled with our upcoming asset management plan, is essential to ensuring that the infrastructure, which the public relies on, continues to meet levels of service in the most financially sustainable way. I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to bring this update forward today, and at this time, we would welcome any questions.
Okay, I am not seeing any questions from council. There is a recommendation, so I will need a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councillor Craig, seconded by Councillor Foxton. You will now be prompted an e-scribe. Councillor Williams.
I vote yes. My computer just froze. Sorry.
Okay, that is carried. Moving on to item 9, information correspondence. I don't believe there was any. There's the council committee and tracking list. And if there's any other business, Councillor Foxton.
Just a direction to staff. I believe the council pictures were taken quite some time ago, and The last one up on the wall is when Chair Ken Sealing was there. I think maybe we could update the council picture in the corridors. And also there's a collage picture, I think it's in the cafeteria, of inauguration night. It's quite nice. And I wouldn't mind having a copy of that. But if we could get our pictures up so people can throw darts at them or do whatever they want. But
Okay, so
Staff.
for the council composite pictures and then that collage or what have you. Okay, Councillor or Chair Redmond.
I have no domain over the collages. However, the council picture in the chair's office was of the previous council, and we are updating it with this council. So that's a work in progress. So that one will be updated. We only put up one term at a time.
So you're always going to be 1 year behind? 1 term behind? You deal with it.
Okay, any other business? Seeing none, our next meeting will be December 5th. I do need a motion to adjourn. I need a mover for that. Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Harris. You'll be prompted now on eScribe. Yep. I'm in favor.